So I hope everyone's had a think about the week and have some things to share with me today. Because once I get going, it's hard to stop me. So you have to really jump in fairly quickly. We'll give it one more minute, and then Jayla can introduce us. Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
And Black May has joined us. How wonderful. That's great. Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here. Thank
Have you
you.
been to any weddings lately? No, wedding free, a temporary cessation.
I avoided Sunday night. There was a wedding to attend. So
Good for you.
Yeah, my friend was saying today, he's like, weddings and funerals are pretty similar. Like,
Yeah, they
depends on the
are.
style.
They bring
Different
out
feel, but
they bring out the best or the worst in people.
yeah, you find out who's a bad drunk really quick.
Who's got family resentments?
Yep.
Yeah.
Who can dance? Who can hold back tears better?
Okay,
Yeah, I
let's
used
get
to.
started.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
okay, let's get started. Go for it, Shayla.
Okay, I want to welcome everyone to How to Be Your Own Therapist. We have Miffi Maxmillion coming to us from Brisbane, Australia. Um, yeah, I won't go into long details, but Miffi, he has great insight and can beautifully mesh the East and the West of Tibet Buddhism in with our Western culture. So we're in excellent hands. And if you have any questions or any sort of like, this is what I'm struggling with, this is the time to ask because she can answer just about everything. Everything from
Well,
anger to, yeah, all of the fun stuff. Thank you.
yeah, I've been told I'm not short of an opinion, and so I've really been trying to kind of moderate myself so that my opinions go off in a dharma track, and and I've continuously got Venerable Rabina in my ear saying, "Forget about the Western stuff. Is it dharma? Just come back to the dharma. Is it virtue or non-virtue?" You know how she just like just focuses everything in and makes it so clear. So I have my inner Venerable Rabina on my shoulder all the time, trying to help me be clear and not get sidetracked off into how sometimes we get a bit of a mushy of everything together. I think it used to be called New Age, but where we try and fit everything, the square peg, the round peg, and the triangle peg all into the one hole, and it's like it doesn't. Some things don't fit, and that's okay. It's just good to know what fits, what perfectly matches, and what doesn't. Then we can see where we stand. So that kind of clarity is what I strive for all the time. The clarity that incisive clarity that Venerable Rabina has. Uh, I I mean, it's slightly terrifying, but it's also fantastic. And so she's just come and visited us in the last couple of days. Spent a couple of really wonderful days with Venerable, just chatting over the kitchen table whilst the incredible storms have been hitting Brisbane. So it's kind of been fitting. Venerable Rabina's visit has been dramatic on all levels, and actually, Venerable Rabina herself has been just really wonderful and calm and inspiring and encouraging and all of those things. So, uh, but yeah, that trying to draw a bridge, and that's something that we all have to do to bridge our experience and Buddhism, and we have to make a bridge because there is a cultural gap there, but the gap doesn't have to be too big. it's more a like a how we're so infused with our own civilization, and we think that is the world, and we don't realize actually it's a very small component of the world, our worldview, our own worldview, or our own society's worldview. It's, you know, barely a fraction of history of when you look at the entire world. So making that little bridge, we just have to have a little bit of, I think, cultural humility to not think, well, the West clearly has it all sorted and everybody else is just a bit twee, you know. Any country that has a religion is a bit twee, or has some weird ritual things is a bit twee, which is kind of the Western arrogance that I come across. But I think we can make that little bridge really effectively, and then the Dharma, the richness of the Dharma can just flow into your life, and it is amazing. It can inform everything, and it can completely change the direction of your life without it being something that you just believe in or hope will work. Like, it can actually work. So before we get started, let's set our motivation like that Dharma motivation. So a Dharma motivation is always for more than just this life. So it's more than just our immediate problems. We're thinking about this life and what happens after we die. Once we start thinking about what happens after we die, then it becomes a spiritual path. If we just think about this world, it's just a worldly path, you know. So we've got to really extend our purpose to think, well, after we die, after our mind separates from the body, what's going to happen? Most of us are a bit frightened about that. Ironically, if you're a materialist, you wouldn't be frightened because it's all over and nothing to worry about. But nevertheless, many materialists are frightened of death, which is strange. So let's take that and think it matters what happens after I die. So we've got to set a motivation that's expansive. And the Buddhist motivation is, well, our nature is to become a Buddha, is to become liberated and enlightened. And from here to enlightenment can seem an awfully long way, but that's the motivation. Why settle for anything less if that's what you naturally can do? So we can motivate, may we become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. May we achieve our natural potential for the benefit of all sentient beings, and along the way be of the utmost benefit to everybody, and at the very least never harm them. And so with that motivation, whatever happens to us in our life, we can use on the path. Whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, a problem or inspiring, we can use all of it. We don't have to waste anything. We can use it on the path to enlightenment. So let's really set our motivation like that. You can think of a few people or situations where help is really needed, and we can aspire, even if we can't help today, one day may we be able to perfectly help everybody.
What are we talking about?
We're setting our motivation. This is our motivation. There's no point talking like this otherwise, because this is what makes it different.
Why is she on my screen?
Oh, hello.
What the?
Have you got a question? No, it's a spammer. But it was a good question, wasn't it? What are we talking about? So that is how you set your motivation. What are we talking about? And it's got to come from the heart, doesn't it? It can't just be intellectual, oh, I should be motivating like this or that. We use all the words, bodhicitta, altruism, to bring our heart into that place. That's why we're here. And so that means we have courage to look at our life with Dharma eyes. So not kind of blaming eyes, but really with wisdom and kindness. So with that rather eventful start, what shall we start with?
Mary had her hand up.
Oh, Mary, okay. Yeah.
Well, I've of course heard people say before that you take your like what's happening in your worldly life into the path, but I never really quite understood what that meant. Like, say you had a fight with your boyfriend. How do you take that into the path?
Yes, that is
Or
a
any
good
example.
question.
That's just the first one that
Yeah,
came to
yeah.
mind.
Yeah, fight with your boyfriend or girlfriend or best friend. I mean, yes, how do you take that onto the path? So, most of the time, when something unpleasant happens to us, our instinctual response is to just get rid of the unpleasant feeling. And so, we'll either retaliate by shouting back, which is like this instinctual kind of response. We're hurt, we try and throw the hurt back. and and we somehow think if they hurt as much as us, then it's even. But of course, now you've got two upset people, so it never works. As they say, revenge, you've got to dig two graves. But nevertheless, we have that kind of either retaliation, or we've trained ourselves, disciplined ourselves a bit to not retaliate, so we swallow it and we swallow the pain. And that both of those are ordinary ways of responding. So we've got to get over this little hump of not liking the discomfort. And so you think, okay, here's a situation. How can I use it? It's unpleasant, so we don't want to go it to waste, because what's the point of going through something unpleasant if there's no point, if there's no profit from it? So actually, an unpleasant situation gives us a huge incentive to take it onto the path. And it's easier because we don't like the pain of it. There is an incentive to use it, especially situations that we can't get out of, uncomfortable, hurtful, unpleasant situations that we can't get out of. We either collapse or we can think, okay, if I can't get out of it, how can I use it? How can I profit? And there is a genuine incentive to do so. So
And
as a
how do you
sideline,
profit
there's
from it?
hardly any incentive to use pleasant things on the path.
Mm-hmm.
Pleasant things we just enjoy, don't we? We forget to use them on the path. We forget to think, oh, just like I'm enjoying this delicious dinner, may everybody. Or just like I love having an afternoon nap, may everybody have the peace of nirvana. We never think that. We just enjoy the afternoon nap. The only time we really get galvanized to do Dharma practice is when we have a problem. And usually that's the first time that we come to a Dharma center is because we have a problem. It's never because everything's going fine and so now I'm going to go and learn to meditate. No way. It's because we get stuck. So right there, it's only the problems that bring us to the Dharma. Isn't that amazing? So at the very least, you can thank the errant girlfriend, boyfriend, or friend for bringing you to the Dharma, for galvanizing you to work on your mind, regardless of what happens. How fantastic. And one time I asked Eddie, but they didn't mean to help me. They meant to hurt me. And he said, it doesn't actually matter. You can still profit. It's like if you're walking along and you find $20 on the ground and you pick it up, it doesn't matter whether that person who lost the $20 meant to lose it or not. You still benefit. So, regardless of what the intention from their side is, we can always profit. And we have an incentive to. But right there, because it's uncomfortable, if we're not careful, we fall into the worldly concerns and we just try and get rid of the pain. It's like masking the symptom. We just try and get rid of the pain without looking what the cause is. And this right there is like do we go for the Dharma or do we go for ordinary life? And it happens in a flash of a second. So we have this is why when we say may all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness, and may they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. Because what we do all the time is just try and become free of suffering over and over again, which is like putting a band-aid on a wound over and over again. Meanwhile, we keep on jabbing ourselves, and meanwhile, the wound gets infected. But we just put a band-aid on again and again and again. So that's like everybody wishes to be free of suffering. Hardly anybody wishes to be free of the causes of suffering. So that's the demarcation between Dharma and non-Dharma. So every time we suffer, we just want to be free of the suffering, and we miss the opportunity to do something about it, because we get sidetracked of just getting rid of the pain. If we weren't so frightened of the pain, we could go, right, what is the cause of this suffering? And this is the benefit of being in a situation that you can't do anything about externally. The person hates you, or they've yelled at you, you've got no control over it, or you've got a sickness that you've got no control over, so you stop fighting to try and get rid of the pain, and you start looking, what can I do? So you start looking at the causes of the suffering, and that's when it becomes Dharma, looking at the cause. So, Mary, what do you reckon the causes are? I mean, there's strata, isn't there? So what are all the different causes that we alight on?
Well, I'd have to say the cause would be because you did the same actions in the past and now you're experiencing it again in the present. I mean, that would
Yep.
be.
Well, that's a very good Buddhist answer, but that's not usually the first one we come up with, is it? Generally, it's like, they hurt me.
Yes,
They injured
it's
me.
true. That's true. And then, but I've always been mystified. Like, you take it into the path. Okay, so you look at what's the cause. That's something I haven't really heard before. But then, what do you do with this pain? Like,
Well, I think you jumped the gun a little bit, and this is the cultural divide that we have. We're in our life, and then we have the Dharma that says the cause is something within us karmically. We've done something in the past, and now it comes back like an echo. So that's true, but there's a whole chasm in between those two things that we can't bridge, and that's why we get into trouble. And so that's why we can be good Buddhists for a while, and then something really intense happens and we lose it. We lose our Buddhism and we can't put it together. And it's because there are these strata of causes. And it's really dangerous to actually ignore what we call the cooperative cause, or the trigger, the external cause. If we ignore that external cause, there might be something that we could do about it and stop a whole lot of harm. So then we've just missed that opportunity. So we have to start with the most obvious and the conventional truth. And actually, someone asked His Holiness the Dalai Lama about what's the cause of depression. And he said, well, depression is a result. It's not an afflictive state of mind. It's a result, and it's a result of many different things. And so what you do is you start with the most obvious physical causes, and then you work progressively more and more subtle. So are you depressed because you're suffering some kind of toxicity, you've got some kind of brain injury, you've got a terrible diet, you've just come off sugar? Really obvious things that you could easily do something about. And if so, you eliminate them, and then you think, oh well, maybe it's something a bit deeper. So you probably go into hormones, like, have you got postnatal depression? Have you got PMT? Have you just gone through a catastrophic experience? Somebody's died. Possibly that's why you're actually sad. It's not even depression. So you go through these obvious things and recognize them and acknowledge them, especially for the power that they have. But that's pretty much where the West stops. Then they go, oh, you're depressed or whatever because things that happened in the past. So we have trauma, and we carry trauma with us, as if that is an inherent thing that we can't do anything about. Of course we can do something about it, but only if we know how. So then you can look at the trauma. And there's different ways to do that. You can either dive into the trauma and relive it again and again and again, where you end up practicing trauma and never get over it, which is what a lot of psychotherapy does. Or you can go into the trauma and see, what is it pointing out karmically? And that's when you can do something about it and change it. But if you go straight to the karmically without checking, have you got a terrible diet and are suffering a sugar rush and a sugar crash every single day? What you're doing is making things really difficult for yourself. So I personally think it's important to start with conventional truth. And what you can do something about it, so that you get conducive conditions, supportive conditions around you, and you've eliminated everything that makes things difficult. Then there's the danger, oh, now you're feeling better. You know, my health is great. I've got a nice place to live. I've got nice friends. Everything's sweet. I think I'll just go to the movies and I'll bleem out and I'll plan my retirement. And you think all the problems are gone. So that's the danger of having conducive conditions. You have to keep going. And when you're in a good space, then you look at the problems. Then you look at the karmic causes. Then you think, well, you know, why did my boyfriend mistreat me? Why did he abuse all of my generosity? All of these things. And you go, well, yeah, because he's a bit of an asshole. Fair enough. But that's not why it happened to me. And it's not why I was upset. Why I was upset was because it was a karmic result of something I did, pretty much rule of thumb exactly the same to somebody else. And so now it comes back. So it's called the Wheel of Sharp Weapons in Buddhism, but actually I like the Aussie version, which is the karma boomerang. You know, the harder you throw a boomerang, it hits its target and it makes damage, and it comes back really fast and hits you if you can't catch it. And that's exactly what karma does. You retaliate, it hits the person, they suffer, and it comes back to you and you suffer. So it's a karmic, the karma boomerang, that's the one, the Wheel of Sharp Weapons. How do we know we've even done any of those things? Only when we experience a problem. Our mind is never interested in karma until we've experienced a problem. And then we're so desperate we'll do anything, including look at our own mind, to get rid of the problem. So I think it's really important to go through the strata from conventional truth to the more subtle truths, physiological ones, to the karmic triggers, to really deep down to the nature of your mind. And then you can use whatever happens to you on the path.
How do you, like, I'm still a little bit mystified. So you look at the karmic causes and see where it comes from in your mind, but how do you switch it into something that's on the path? Like, how do you make it part of the path?
Yeah. There's multiple ways. I'll try to give you an example. So a few years ago, we had disharmony in our centre, and I kind of suffered what you'd call a moral injury, you know, and it was around about the COVID era, and I'd been reading about moral injuries, how you know, people in hospitals, nurses in hospitals, were forced to act in ways that was against their feeling of what healing is, and so they suffered a moral injury. And this happened to a lot of people, and I thought, wow, the same things happened to me at a Buddhist center. That's really uncanny and doesn't sit right. How did this happen? And so I was doing the Zambala practice, you know, where you offer water to Zambala, and often that practice is done for generating wealth and resources for the center. But the worse my situation got, the more I naturally found myself recognizing how the Zambala practice is actually about generating realizations, and to have this wealth of realizations pouring forth. And the more intense and extreme my situation became, the more all of the extraneous stuff just fell away, and I started really thinking about the Dharma. So it was like this incredible wealth of realizations coming, because it was so intense and so immediate. I wasn't distracted by any other things. So that was one thing, you know, that your practice can become very, very strong-hearted when you have a problem. That's one thing. But then, of course, then you start thinking, well, what is happening to me and how is it so unbearable? What would be the cause? It's got to be similar. So disrespecting others in the past, having so much pride that you don't even notice that you're disrespecting others in the past. So then it's like, I naturally felt I never want to do that to anybody else. So that's the difference. The ordinary world Someone's angry at you, you hurt, you throw it back at them, and you're happy when they suffer more than you. And if they don't suffer, you try and hurt them more. That's the worldly one. But the Dharma one is, it comes at you, you suffer, and you go, I never want anybody to go through that experience again, because it's unbearable. So I vow never to retaliate or harm people like that, no matter what they do. And now we know exactly what it is to not do. So now I know exactly how to not disrespect people, exactly how to listen to them. So there's that. You change your behavior and you think, no matter what, if you've ever been mistreated by a girlfriend or boyfriend, you go, I will never treat somebody like that, no matter what.
Thank you. That really brings it into perspective for me. And actually, I have moths in my apartment, and like little moths that like to eat wool. So all my wool is all stored away in boxes and trunks. And I saw a moth in my bathroom, and he was just sitting there on the wall. And I resisted the impulse to kill him.
Yeah, well, that's it. There's that impulse right there. Something we dislike, get rid of it, kill it. I mean, that's a terrifying thing to notice about yourself, isn't it? It
Yes.
takes courage to notice that.
Yeah.
And then you can thank that moth.
Yes, and he's living happily in my bathroom now.
And then you've got a karmic connection now. So even a tiny moth can help bring you to enlightenment. How amazing.
Yes.
And so once we start having a connection with beings, then we start feeling warm-hearted. They become real living beings. So that's how it happens.
Thank you, Miffi.
Yeah.
That really helped.
bit of a kind of a roundabout thing, but you see where I got caught out was right at the beginning, where I was kind of being mistreated, but I just absorbed it and I did nothing about it. And that's not healthy. And it was because I was ignoring the conventional truth, which is this is not good workplace behavior. If this was in any other workplace, there's laws against it. But here is in a Dharma center, I'm just going to tolerate it. It's completely twisted. It's actually not fair on those people. So in a way, by me just tolerating it for so long, did a disservice to them because they couldn't help themselves and there was no one to stop them. And here I was just absorbing it all, letting them behave worse and worse and worse. That's a disservice to them. And it doesn't help anybody. So in the end, it's like to be able to save them from themselves. We have to help them to not harm. And that's really different from retaliating or forcing somebody out of this kind of retaliatory impulse. It's actually more like if you really cared about them, you'd get over your fear of conflict, your fear of it's not aggression. What is it? Of like what's the word where you just absorb it all and you don't want to.
Passive aggressive?
What is it?
Passive aggressive?
Yeah, that's right. You don't want to bring it up. So that just comes from a fear of actually talking about things. And people think, oh, I'm just refraining from harm. No, it's actually a lack of courage. It'd be much better if really early on we could sit down with each other and talk about this isn't working. I'm feeling harmed here. What's going on? And of course, when we do that, then people say, what do you mean you're feeling harmed? I'm harmed. I've been mistreated. You go, what? So right there you can see it's just this over and over again, retaliation, backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. It all comes back to when we don't even know we've harmed others. Someone harms us and we take it personally. And it can blow up into these huge things. So it's like to save them from themselves. Because we care. We do something about it. There's a big disservice that happens if we can't call out bad behavior, if we don't know how to do it, and we don't have any training. And maybe if you're in a good workplace, you might have some training in how to call out bad behavior. but it doesn't really happen in Western Dharma centers, how to call out bad behavior really early on. Everybody just has this misconstrued idea to not retaliate and tolerate it. So then the bullies get bigger and bigger and bigger. And nobody's helped. It's a travesty. And in the end, you end up with abuse. And then you end up with lawsuits. Where did that start? It started really small with a lack of courage of being able to call out bad behavior. And the reason we can't do it is because we fuse the bad behavior with the person and we think they're a bad person. We forget they're our friend. They're our Dharma brother and sister. We're probably Vajra brothers and sisters. We owe it to each other to look after each other and help each other. But we have a lack of courage, and so we just tolerate it. But it's not tolerating in terms of patience. It's tolerating in terms of a lack of courage. You know, and people in the end, they think, how did all this abuse happen in Dharma centers? And it's shocking, and they must be bad people, bad eggs, or bad apples, or whatever it is, you know, a bad monk or a nun, an aberration, and everybody else is okay. No, it's because it started small and no one knew how to stop it. So also, we can bring in the whole approach to emptiness and dependent arising that Lama Tsongkhapa had, his unique approach, which is where you start with dependent arising, the conventional truth, that how it takes two, everybody has their part in things, and it leads you to emptiness. Therefore, there is no inherent existence. There's no inherent right or wrong. There's no inherent good person or bad person. So you get that emptiness. But then what Lama Tsongkhapa did that is unique was he then took it back and returned to dependent arising, but in this new way. So he didn't stop at emptiness. He came back to dependent arising, informed by emptiness. And that's what we have to do in Dharma centers. We see the conventional truth, we have really good world's best practice, and we don't tolerate negative behavior. But then we bring in the Dharma, and then we go, what strengthens that and supports that is our understanding of emptiness. There's no inherent bad people or good people. And actually, within emptiness, the nature of the mind is pure. That is emptiness. And then we come back to dependent arising. That informs how we work in the world. And then we work with our Vajra brothers and sisters, and we see them as Buddhas and as infinitely precious to us, and we want to help them. And the difference is that we're not ignoring the problems, and we're not just tolerating the problems. We're able to actually deal with them because we've come back to conventional reality. So that's our task, folks. Anyone that works at a Dharma center, this is our task. That's how we keep it all nice. Yes, Carl. Oh, you're on. Oh, yeah, go for it.
Sorry. Yeah. So when Dharma is what is a positive thing?
Yes, Dharma with a capital D, the teachings of the Buddha. And so that doesn't just mean the writings, what's written down. It means the living realizations. It's the path to enlightenment. So Dharma is the prescription for enlightenment.
Like what Siddhartha went through?
Well, what Siddhartha went through is a demonstration for us that it's possible for a human being to become enlightened. And then he taught, you know, when the Buddha became enlightened, that wasn't like the end, they lived happily ever after. He taught for like 40 years, all the different approaches. So that's the Dharma.
Okay.
But Dharma's like a thing that we have to do. It's a prescription. It's like you don't collect a whole lot of prescriptions and display them on your shelf and go, come and look at my beautiful prescriptions. This is the one I believe in. This is the best one. Well, like, what do you do with a prescription? You have to take it and you've got to follow the instructions. You can't just take all of the pills at once. You've got to do a little bit every day and internalize it. It's that literal. So that's what the Dharma is. Yeah.
Okay.
So do you think that's positive?
Yes, I think normalization, a pattern in life, even that's not negative, is super powerful. Like a sleep schedule, work, time to socialize, uh time for yourself, time for your lovers, whatever.
So that's not Dharma though. That's positive, but it's not Dharma.
Uh,
So,
sorry,
so something
I
can be
guess I'm new
positive,
to.
it can be virtuous, it can be helpful, but it's not Dharma.
Okay.
It's
Can I
samsaric.
tell? I'm dealing with like my girlfriend of 15 years killed herself August 22nd, and
I'm so sorry to hear.
yeah, and then I broke my back for like 2 months. I was paralyzed. Uh and
Wow,
I'm
that's
just trying to
heavy.
figure out, like, there's no, it's an ultimatum. I can't, she's not coming back. So I'm looking at it like, oh, I got freedom now. Uh
She's not coming back, but do you think the karma's finished? That karma's finished, but you'll meet again, of course, because you have a connection. It's still there. Not as that person, but you might
right.
recognize each other. You might come across someone and there's a connection.
Yeah.
That's how you came across her in the first place.
Yeah.
Didn't come from nowhere. So when when people die, it's like they go overseas. They don't disappear. They've become inaccessible. They go overseas and you meet again. And how you meet again, whether it's pleasant and easy or whether it's fraught with difficulties, depends on the karma we've created together. So, what you can do while you have this separation is create really good karma so that when you meet again, which you definitely will be drawn together because it's like unfinished business, so that when you meet again, it'll be beneficial and positive.
Yeah. Or I guess just, even if it's not her, same spirit, same idea within. I really want to get back to like the loving relationship we had and whatnot. But anyway, that's probably enough about me.
Yeah, but the way that you do that is you think about, I mean, everybody has bad qualities, right? So you don't have to dwell on those. We're samsaric beings. So you think about those flashes of light of her good qualities, and you rejoice, which means you think, how amazing in all of this world that someone could have those good qualities.
Yeah.
And that feeling of how amazing, then enjoy that feeling and then determine you're going to recognize those qualities wherever they manifest, in whoever.
Yeah.
So it's
Thank
like
you.
a guiding light. And that will change the whole direction of everything, of
For
your
sure.
life and whoever she is now. Just that. All the very, very best, Carl. And thank you so much for being so brave and sharing.
Thank you for your advice. I'm gonna keep listening.
Yeah. Charlie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so I've been practicing with meditation for a long time, and I've been a seeker, so I've gone into like Hindu, I belong to a Hindu group, I belong to a Buddhist group. I also do a lot of things with neuropsychologists and the epidemiology of trauma. I study that, and indigenous wisdom, and like plant medicine. So I've kind of delved into a lot of different areas. And I noticed this thing, which is actually, I feel like you touched on it in your topic, which was, the spiritually bypassing area. And I
Oh
kind
yeah.
of heard you even touch on it when you were just discussing, like holding people accountable, when they're in, these spaces, so that, abuses don't occur, and so I guess, it's intriguing to me, and this is what brought me to this group tonight, was because the topic kind of touched on that space. And I thought, oh, I need to hear what is being said about that because maybe it'll help me gain some wisdom because my feeling is, and it's funny because I see people in every one of these spaces do that spiritually bypassing piece, right? Not everybody, obviously, but it feels like that too often occurs, right? And it's like that piece when you're talking about learning and introspecting and taking away, the wisdom from the experience, not just allowing ourselves
Yeah.
to kind of end up the victim of
So,
that
so, so
experience, right?
Charlie, it's called spiritual bypassing. Is that the contemporary term for it?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay. Okay, okay. So
right.
I've got to say,
There's
Charlie,
all
it's
kinds of
great.
terms, right?
I think it's wonderful to meet you. I think you're what's called a polymath. All the things that you're into. So it's going to be quite a task for a polymath such as yourself to be able to bring them all together. So the Buddhist thing for this spiritual bypassing, which is really quite a great term, is that usually in an ordinary world, when trauma happens, we we have a huge sense of connection and bonding with people. A disaster happens, we connect, we bond, but we don't bring wisdom to it. People think that connection, the bonding, is it. So I'll give you an example. Like, for instance, when climate change happening here in Australia, we've got severe floods and storms. And so down in northern New South Wales, the Northern Rivers, it's called, it floods. And the last few years, they've had a once in 100-year flood every 3 months, in which the river comes up 12 meters, houses get swished away. Some houses are brought up and moved onto high hills. Other houses are rebuilt with stilts. Then the next flood comes, goes even higher than the stilts. And so over and over again, like this has happened many times now, that now the community down there is beginning to say, I just don't have the heart to rebuild again. So the first time the really big floods happened, it was like, we're Australians, we're a strong community, we'll band together, we'll support each other. And it was this highly meaningful community bonding. Complete strangers came together and helped each other, worked altruistically. It was a big deal. And everyone talked about the Australian spirit. Well, I mean, and I always think, well, every country says that, but give it to them. At least it helps them connect with their spirit. But then, so it's like, we won't be beaten. We'll rebuild. So they rebuilt, and then the flood happened again. And then many people rebuilt. Many people are living in the shell of their house, like all the walls are gone because of mold. They're camping literally with a tent in their lounge room, but they're not going to leave their community. And then the flood comes again. So now there's ghost towns. They're boarded up. The libraries are washed away. The town halls are washed away. Priceless artworks are washed away. Human beings, their houses are washed away. And they're finally saying, I don't know if I can rebuild again. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with this picture? So what happens is we have an intense experience and we get all the community bonding, and it moves us as human beings, and we extend ourselves, and we leave it at that. We bring no wisdom to it. And so what people take from an experience of that is community and caring for others. But that's not wisdom. That's not a realization. That's just a strong feeling. And it fades in time. There's no wisdom there. So the wisdom goes, we're suffering. What's the cause? What do I do? And it's right there. And it's like, these are intelligent people. So this is how deep it is. So when we're talking about trauma, I don't think Western psychology goes deep enough because it does not bring wisdom. It just stops at the intense feelings, but doesn't bring any insight to the matter, and it doesn't change our behavior. It just kind of helps with an emotion, with a feeling. And worse than that, it's not even that kind of community bonding and compassion that happens in times of extreme, especially natural disasters. It fades. So there's not even any wisdom there. It's not even a realization. It's a feeling. And feelings are unstable. And if it was actually a realization, it would last. We would still care about the community how many years on, even when the intensity of the situation's gone. But people don't. It falls away and we end up bickering and end up saying no more, no more refugees or migrants or whatever, whereas a moment ago we were all helping each other. So why does it fade? Because the Western whole approach, psychology, just stops on the feelings and brings no wisdom to it. What's the causes of things? So I think that's the key. The whole spiritual bypassing, the whatever, we get sidetracked on the feeling and think the feeling is important. But it's not. The feeling is leading us to wisdom. And the wisdom has to be people matter, whether I think closely to them or not. But we don't.
So can I ask you this follow-up? So, I do, one of the reasons that I got into doing, this, like you said, it doesn't come from nowhere, right? So you get there because of, tumultuous experience and I've done a lot of advocacy work and had very little, there's a very little available for justice for exploitation, and so I get to see what you're talking about. I just wonder this though, because I watch people who will fight for others, right? They'll fight for them so fervently and be wanting to help, and then the minute their job gets threatened or the minute they get threatened legally, then I watch them flip into the perpetrator for the same people who they actually were against and they saw the harm they were doing. And then I wonder, like, what occurs? And I feel like it's that desperate people doing desperate things because this world makes people's needs desperate when it comes from this, this lens of like capitalism and the framework we live in. So what is your take on that?
It's that, again, that we don't have the wisdom supporting our good intentions. And so the wisdom is a very particular wisdom. And it's the wisdom understanding that the perpetrator, what's driving the perpetrator, isn't an inherently bad person, but it's their afflictions. So because we don't understand the nature of human beings, the nature of a living being, you can have all of these good intentions, you save the oppressed group, but because we've got this inherent kind of view, these ones are inherently oppressed and these ones are inherently bad, we're partisan. So we have all of the empathy for the oppressors, but we do not understand human beings. And so we've just got them in these categories, and those categories actually are not inherent. And so when our circumstances change, who we see as oppressed and who we see as oppressor changes, of course, because it's not based on wisdom. It's just based on our empathy. And when our empathy changes because we're stressed or because we are under attack, then suddenly how we feel about the oppressed changes. Now we're like, we change our whole value system and we justify a new one. So that's because our care for others is based on a feeling. It's not based on wisdom. It's based on a feeling of empathy. And we can only have empathy when we have leisure. The moment we're stressed, we lose our empathy. How stable is that? Nothing. It's so dangerous. So we have to have our empathy lead us to wisdom and compassion. So in Buddhism, compassion is not empathy. Empathy is the precursor. Compassion is a wish for others to be free of suffering, meaning the oppressed to be free of suffering and the oppressors to be free of suffering equally. So it's informed by wisdom.
I'll ask you a question.
Once you get that, then you won't ever burn out and you won't give up on people and you won't be motivated by hatred, because a lot of this can be save the oppressor, but there's no room in the heart. Save the oppressed, but there's no room in the heart for the oppressor. It's as if they are
100%. Yeah, I see that same thing. Yeah. I have so
and
many
that's
more
why you
things that
flip. That's why you flip. It's
that's why
not
people flip. Yeah.
because they just stop at the empathy, at the community bonding, at the me and mine, my people. And it's done at the expense of those which are not my people.
Right.
And that comes down to the wisdom view, which that's not a view that understands the nature of people.
So I kind of feel like you're touching on something I deeply believe, which is that connection, right? It's the connection with our collective, the whole, the everything. That is that space of, what you're talking about, wisdom, right?
Yeah, but you can only connect. You have to connect through the wisdom. You can't just connect through feeling. And usually we stop at that. And that's why it's unstable. That's why we lose
Right.
our cool, and it's why we lose the Dharma, because it's based on feeling. And it's not that feeling's wrong, but feeling is the precursor. We have to use it. And this is where the worldly concerns come in again, because we have a feeling, we get into the feeling rather than using the feeling. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche would often talk about being an inner professional. So, we all have this idea of professionalism, and this really can help us pull it all together. Professionalism, say if you're a kindergarten teacher, you're going to equally care about all the kiddies, regardless of whether some are nice and some are real terrors, right? We expect a lowly paid kindergarten teacher to be professional, don't we? To equally care regardless of how they personally feel or the personal relationship they have with those kids. And it's exactly what we're supposed to do with human beings. Be an inner professional and equally care about the oppressed and the oppressor. And the only way we can do that is if we understand the nature of human beings. Just like a kindergarten teacher understands the nature of kids, that actually they're not the devil incarnate, they're just suffering children that don't have enough support, and so that's bringing out the worst in them. You're not going to say they're an evil child. Even though you might feel it, you don't believe it. And that's what we expect of every single lowly kindergarten teacher in the country. But that's how we have to be with human beings. Inner professional. Effie, you've got a question too. Very patiently having your hand up. Go for it.
Yeah, I couldn't find the emoji for it. Now I found it. I just found it. I have a question. Like you made a long story about the flood in Australia, and that was when we were discussing the spiritual bypass. Could you elaborate how that relate? What is spiritual bypass is, and how that example you mentioned matter to that?
Oh yes, so this coming back to the spiritual bypass. So that's generally that we think we're being tolerant, good, patient, altruistic people, but actually the word came to me, we're avoiding confrontation. So the motivation isn't actually patience to bear the difficulty. The motivation is I don't want to be uncomfortable because I don't like confrontation. So that's what's called a worldly concern, short term. It's a short term kind of, it's like the sushi train, it's just the immediate gratification. We're not thinking about the long term. So all the time we're there, we're avoiding confrontation until we can no longer avoid it. And then we flip over to the other extreme, and the thing that motivates us to do something about it is anger. So on one hand,
Spiritual bypass just means taking a shortcut.
does it? I've never heard this term before. I thought it was like emotional avoidance or
Okay.
gaslighting somebody.
Okay. It's the first time I heard that term too.
Yeah, no, I think it's more like gaslighting. Gaslighting was the word of the year in 2023. And so spiritual
lots of them.
I mean, that's my assumption. Spiritual gaslighting or spiritual bypass is where you skip a step and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. If you've missed a step, it's like you fall down the ladder. And many times we can kid ourselves that we're being patient, but we're just avoiding confrontation. It's a failure, it's a lack of courage.
The example you mentioned about the flood in Australia, instead of the community trying to help each other initially and maybe lasted for limited time, but it didn't last forever. What do you think the alternative, the better path is?
So why do you think it didn't last forever?
Because it doesn't solve the real problem. The real problem is the environment and people losing their homes. And yeah, I can understand people have limited patience and energy to rebuild their home over and over again. So no, I haven't, to answer your question, I haven't thought about that problem deeply. So
Yeah. I mean, so that's the long-term view. It's very difficult for human beings to take a long-term view. But also, why it wears off is that usually our empathy only arises when we see obvious suffering. And so it's very limited. So we see someone crying and we go, oh. But the rest of the time, where they're walking around, they're not crying, we don't feel for them. So that's just obvious suffering. And it's the most, it's called the suffering of pain, and it's obvious to us. And we rely on that for our empathy to arise. But in Buddhism, that is not the main suffering that we're trying to get rid of. Actually, the main suffering is like the existential suffering, the suffering of conditionality, which is whether you're walking around happy or crying or neutral, we're still in a suffering state because we're in the bondage of samsara. We have no control over our mind, and karma's going to ripen and we'll suffer. So that really deep suffering of conditionality, that's the suffering that we're trying to get rid of in Buddhism. Not the ordinary suffering, because the ordinary suffering depends on us seeing, being in a situation where we see suffering, recognizing it as suffering, and then we respond. But there's other types of suffering. This one, the suffering of being discontent. So who would think a billionaire is suffering, right? They've got everything. They're not crying. They even say they're happy, but they have the suffering of discontent. They never have enough. And everything that you run to turns to its opposite. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama called this the suffering we run towards. When we overeat, it's the suffering we run towards. We think it's happiness, but it's actually the suffering we're running towards. And what drives that is the even deeper suffering of conditionality. And that's not obvious to us, but that's the task of a Buddhist, i.e. someone wanting to become a Buddha, to become liberated and a Buddha, is to recognize that suffering and work on that. And that then our empathy, if our empathy is based on that recognition that everybody has this existential suffering, we will naturally feel for them and care for them, whether they're going through an extreme episode of suffering or not. We will sincerely care for them. So our compassion won't wear off. it'll grow.
Yeah, I agree, but I think that's most natural path, like for people who experience nature disasters, to be united together as a community. I think it's same as when you mentioned about the depression, finding the cause for depression,
Yeah.
you look at the surface level first, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's right. And it's important
Um,
because then that leads us to it. But if we just leave it at that, then we miss an
mhm.
opportunity.
I see your point. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It was good. Oh my gosh, so we've got 2 minutes. Is it any last anything to say, anybody? We've covered a lot of ground uh, in a strange way. So let's dedicate. So let's make it a Buddhist dedication. So that means we're going to dedicate it to the very best thing we could possibly think of. We're not going to have an impoverished dedication, ones like, well, I hope everybody doesn't suffer too much. Like, or I hope they get over their depression soon. No, we're going to dedicate the very best. May, by us just talking about this stuff, may we have realizations in our heart. May we follow them up. May we develop our wisdom so that we can become completely free, not just of suffering, but all of its causes, become liberated from the bondage of samsara, which is that cyclic existence that we're stuck in. And not only that, what's it for? It's so we can become liberated and enlightened so we can help everybody else, because they're all suffering, regardless of how they look. Some really, really distressingly suffering. So we've got to do it as soon as possible. So let's dedicate. May we become a Buddha as soon as possible so that we can alleviate all the sufferings of all the sentient beings as soon as possible, and take it on heart as like this is our personal responsibility. So dedicate for that. Don't let any doubts come in. Doesn't matter. This is an aspiration, and the aspirations, as His Holiness says, is the bridge between reality and the future. So let's dedicate like that. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.